This video is going to guide you in the rebuilding process of an R200 differential from a Nissan 240SX. It is the diff that me and Adam pulled out while he's here. I'm going to rebuild it and then send it to him when I'm finished. He wanted a little bit shorter gear ratio, so I'm going to put a 4.6 ring and pinion out of a Pathfinder in it. Gonna do new bearings, clean it up, put that 4.6 in it, and kind of bring you guys along the process. So I'm going to be draining the fluid out of this diff first before I pull the cover, so there's not a big mess. A good precaution is to always remove the fill plug first. This is good because you'll have to fill the diff sooner or later, and these are really kind of finicky, and if you can't get the fill plug out, you can't fill the diff, so there's no reason to drain it. So always get the fill plug undone first and then drain it. After you drain the diff, you need to remove the 14 mil bolts around the cover to pull this up. Now when you remove this cover, a little bit more fluid is going to come out, so make sure there's a pan underneath and just give it a tap. Now that the cover is off, you need to pull the stub axles out. So a good way to do that is to tap them with a hammer, and they come right out. And make sure that you keep the stubs left and right. So when you're looking at the back of the diff, this is the left side, driver's side, passenger side, right side. So keep everything in order when you take it apart. And you can mark it if you want, if you can't remember, or if you're going to move the parts. This is why you keep, this is the driver's side, passenger side, they are shorter. Driver's side's taller, passenger side is shorter. Now you're going to remove the caps that hold the carrier in. It is a 17, you can't use a deep socket. So here is a 17 deep because it's so much thicker, it doesn't let you. So you need to use a thin socket to get it out. You'll need a pry bar to get the caps out. You want to keep these in order as well. Left side or driver's side and passenger side. But all this stuff will be cleaned up. A good way to pull the actual carrier out is to use a pry bar, and try not to smash your fingers, but they're usually in there pretty good. Pop it out, and there are these spacers on each side, so do not lose these or mismark them, because you'll have to know that to put it back together. A fat one and a skinny one on the driver's side, like that. And then there's just a skinny one on the passenger side. And if you need to add any or subtract any, you're pretty much subtracting from this one to add to that one, because this is a certain distance. You can't just take one of these spacers out, because if you did that, there would be a negative amount of space, so it would actually have play in it. To now undo these 17s to get the ring off of the carrier. This is how you tell which ratio these are. You guys might not be able to see it, but this is how you tell the ratio. On Nissan Diffs, the ratio is stamped in the ring gear. So 4912 is a 410. So Adam had a 410 in it, we're gonna put a 4.6. So this is what we're replacing, as well as the pinion. So those are the two parts that aren't going to be used. So everything we've taken apart so far, we're going to still use. So you're going to undo the pinion, which is a 27 mil. Get one of these Milwaukee's, the ones that are 1,100 foot-pounds removal torque, because it pretty much is impossible to do this otherwise, because you'd have to hold the whole thing and get this off. With this way, you can just pretty much just blast off without having to hold anything. You can hold it with your hand, so it's not a big deal. This is a 4.6. It has 37 teeth on the ring gear, which is this. What we're replacing, 8 teeth on the pinion. So this is the pinion, and that's the part I need to press out. So I'm pretty much gonna pull those two pieces out of this differential and discard the rest. All you need is the ring and pinion, and then you just put it into, the S13 R200 housing, which this also is an R200 housing as well. This one, you could see 37 to 8. All right, so I have both the diffs, and I'm going to use this press right here. So what I'm going to do is press the pinions out and then clean everything up. Okay, as you just saw, I pressed in the new races, and the easiest way to do that, if you don't have the correct tool, is after you press out the old races, you just use them as the tool to press it in because they're the exact same size. So it works really well. Okay, so one thing you're gonna have to do is when you pull the bearing off the pinion, so here's the 241. So this is the spacer for the 240 pinion, and you need to put that one onto the 4.6 pinion where you won't have the right space. And even after you do that, you may have to still check to see if it is the right spacing. So this one is a 5 mil 0.08, and this is a 5 mil 0.25. When you're pressing bearings on, you want to press from this piece right here, because if you put any load on this outside race, the bearing will be bad. So find something that'll slip right over it. Alright, so now the new bearing is on, and it's almost ready to insert the shaft and press on the other pinion bearing. Alright, so here's the tricky part. You have to pretty much insert the pinion into the differential, but you have to support the pinion like so while the diff is like sitting on top, so you can actually press the bearing on to the shaft. So you'll see the diff around this, but you won't see these two blocks, so you have to actually support that to press the other bearing on, just so you guys know what's going on. See, the pinion is now in. precaution is when you do this, you don't want to mix races up. So I'm keeping this race with this bearing since it's the exact same as the other side. The ring gear on, you need to put some red Loctite onto the bolts and then torque them to 140 foot-pounds. All the bolts are Loctited and torqued to 140 foot-pounds. Now all that needs to be done is the carrier needs to be shimmed into the diff housing, and then it needs to be checked for backlash and engagement. Next, you're going to install your shims, the ones you kept in order. So the two are on the left side and the one is on the passenger side or the right side. And now install your bearing caps. Snug them up. To use a non-impact socket because it needs to be thin, and the torque on these okay, so right here is an issue. So I'm going to have to adjust the pinion height. So you can see how each one of these has it all the way, because the tooth engagement should be throughout the gear, and on this it's barely on it. So the pinion needs to come up to actually engage the teeth correctly. And if you spin it, you can hear it. So it needs to be, the pinion needs to be moved up a little bit, and all that really has to be done is this has to be taken out, and then really all you do is put a different shim in to shim the pinion a little bit higher up. Backlash is pretty much the engagement from the ring to the pinion. I'm gonna pretty much seal it up, put a little bit of fluid in it, and then when Adam gets it, he'll finish filling it up. I still need to install the seals on the pinion and the axles, and then install the axle stubs. I'll probably give it a nice coat of gloss black, and then I clean the cover so it's all nice and actually not greasy and grimy. So then I'll send this off to Adam, and he'll have a nice 4.6 to test out on the track.